Now we'll zoom out for a minute and think about how we can use the production possibility frontier to think about economy-wide economic growth or decline. So first, how could we model economy-wide production rather than just trade between two individuals? Well, just generally, as we add more and more and more people to the market, we continue to line up the production possibility frontiers from lowest cost or flattest to steepest. Okay, you don't have to draw that because I'm going to show you what that means, right? Like as I add more lines here, we begin flat and we become steep so that eventually, as we have many, many, many producers in a market, our production possibility frontier begins to look like a curve with the flattest or lowest cost production first, and only later the highest cost production. So we begin with lowest cost production methods, and this doesn't even have to represent a person, right? It could be the method of production or the region of production, something like that, right? So we begin with the lowest cost methods of production before moving to higher cost methods. And the consequence of that is that we would expect production to always exhibit diminishing marginal returns. In other words, the cost of production should be increasing the more we produce. The cost of production increases with production. And this is an important assumption that's not entirely straightforward. I hope it is to you right now in the context of our production possibility frontier model, but in terms of a firm's production, it's not always obvious why that should be true. So I want you to remember this because it is an important assumption that we're going to make in the firm section of the course. Okay, so we could model economy-wide production with this curved production possibility frontier. And then what sorts of things would lead to changes in the production possibility frontier or shifts? We can model economic growth by an expansion of the production possibility frontier and likewise decline with a contraction. And I'll show you what that looks like in a minute. But first, let's just talk about the factors that could affect production possibilities. Remember, production possibilities represents all of the possible combinations of goods that we can produce given our resources. So one thing that can shift our production possibilities is a change in our resources or our factors of production. Factors of production are just inputs into the production process. And obviously that could be anything based on what you're producing. In the previous examples, we've used time as a simple input, but in economics, we tend to break this down into a few different categories so that we can see how different inputs might affect production differently. So typically we would list factors of production as labor, time that you spend working on something, capital, okay, that could be machinery or finances in some cases, human capital, that's not just time, but the skill that you have to produce something, and natural capital or natural resources, land being one of them. So if we have a change in our resources, then that's going to affect how much we can produce, and the production possibility frontier could either expand or contract, whether we've gained or lost resources. We could also have a change in technology that we use for production, right? Maybe we invent some new method of production that allows us to produce the product using fewer resources. That would be great, and it would expand our production possibility frontiers. Likewise, efficiency and productivity describe the way that we transform our resources into consumption goods. And so if we have a more efficient production process, or if we have more productive resources, then we might have the same number of people, but if they're more productive, right, then we're going to be able to produce more. This should say productivity. There we go. And finally, specialization and trade. We've seen in this example how specialization and trade can expand the production possibility frontier and improve outcomes for both of our individuals. We'll examine the effects of trade on our economy and different groups within the economy in a future module.